from you. They're asking for you to physically go out and do exactly what they tell you. And there's a direct conflict between that and divergent thinking. And so to exist in that football environment, I had to squelch my potential, right? And that led to my deepest mental health journeys. Right? And I want to go back to this idea of potential and also the idea of stigma, because I think one of the things that stigmatized more than cannabis is spirituality. You know, in this conversation of mental health, there's nothing that talks about like our deeper purpose in life. Why are we here? And so as I talk to people about mental health, the most important question I start with is, why do you think you're on this planet? And what do you think happens after you leave this planet? Because if we don't understand why we're here, how can we even get a sense of what our true potential is? And so, again, I thought I was here to be a football player. When I realized actually that's not what it was about, I went on a journey. I started asking these deeper, more complicated questions. And I found that was really the key to me moving towards greater mental health, is to understand my place in the larger scheme of things.
Ricky, did you feel like that NFL environment was toxic to your spirituality and your journey?
Well, I think a 99.999% of employment in a capitalistic society is that, because they're not asking about the deeper parts of yourself. They're just trying to access your productivity in the way that they've defined it. And I think the NFL is a great example of it. You know, that we're great athletes. You know, we can run fast and catch balls, and that becomes what's important, not what's inside of us, not the potential that actually manifested those abilities.
Now that the NFL has embraced a little bit more of the CBD and THC use amongst its players, do you think if you had this mind frame now with the Players Association of the NFL and your passion for football, and they were married at the same time and being allowed to use cannabis while playing, do you think you would have continued your NFL career?
I think there's a narrative where that works, but again, I still think it's still framed as there's something that you should be doing, and
right.
What allows you to be able to do that, where to me there's a deeper sense of what I should be doing. And what I'm realizing in the context of this conversation is that my athletic ability in the bigger picture was given to me to have a greater platform to be able to have these conversations. And so I think if I had that awareness and I was utilizing the platform while I was still playing to be an advocate, 100%. But it was the opposite. I had to lie and hide. And this is what all the players do. You know, over 70% of players in the NFL are consuming cannabis for these exact reasons. But all of them, even to me, right, that we whisper about it, you know, we go behind corners and we talk about it. And I just think of all these athletes have this amazing platform, and people that are watching football, they're all suffering from some form of mental health issues. And to see athletes be able to talk openly about it, because it's hard what we do and we go through difficult challenges. And I think the ones that have found ways to do it effectively, for them to share their story, it's going to be inspiring and empowering to a whole lot of people, more so than watching us score touchdowns. The thing is, I didn't even start to think this way until I started to consume cannabis. It's like when people talk about mental health, you know, it's kind of a vague term. But for me, I just get right down to it. Mental, that makes me think of what's going on in here. And I found most of my life, I was distracting myself from what was going on in here. And when I started to slow down and consume cannabis, I became very aware of what was going on in here. And that gave me the capacity to actually start to listen and pay attention to what was going on inside.
That's a great way to put it, because so many people don't tap into the spirituality of cannabis and the unlocking of the potential. So often we continue on this journey of going and being productive and making money and doing X, Y, and Z to live instead of actually living. So part of what you're experiencing, and you experienced that at such a young age, you know, your insight and intuition really tapped in very early in your career, that you were able to pay attention to what was most important for you. and be able to actually vocalize it. I remember watching that on ESPN, and the notion and the connotation and the description of Ricky Williams throws away his career because he wants to smoke weed. It was such a negative perception. And it was like, I can't wait till he does his docuseries. I can't wait till he does his book, because there's so much more depth to your decision than how it was portrayed nationally, you know? So you had that insight from very early, and a lot of people don't tap into that, even in their 40s, 50s, 60s, like patients that I manage and take care of now. They still haven't been able to tap into that purpose. So it's intuitive.
So Dr. Lin, could you tell us a little bit more about anxiety, depression, and some more of the common mental health disorders?
Definitely. Those are two of the top, I'd say top 5 things that you can't ignore are anxiety disorders, depression, psychosis, eating disorders, dissociative disorders. Also, like PTSD is huge. And I'm so grateful that the last 3 years in COVID has allowed people to tap into what PTSD is and what does that look like. And so many have realized that they've been managing and kind of tucking it away their whole life, whether it's from trauma in childhood or things that they're currently going through, the isolation. That time alone helped a lot of people to unlock what was going on with them emotionally and mentally. So there's so many blessings in COVID, and I want to make sure that it's always discussed as it impacted the nation in a crazy way, but look at the points that you've had pivotal time to yourself to be able to tap in, because you didn't have those moments before, when you were working 9 to 5 and running to get the kids and making dinner and trying to fit in the gym and do that. Your routine, was abruptly stopped, so that you had a moment to be a little bit more still with yourself. And those moments of meditation and stillness allowed you to tap into exactly how you are feeling and acknowledge those PTSD moments. I see a lot of that. And nationally, as I practice, PTSD is a unifying qualifier for medical cannabis. So, which includes depression, which includes insomnia, which includes, anxiety. So all of those fall under that category. So even though they're not exclusively listed as one of the qualifying medical conditions in the state of Florida in particular, under the PTSD category, it's a realm and a host for so many different things. So it's exceptionally, exceptionally common in our medical community. And many don't realize, they think it has to be something super traumatic in order for them to actually diagnose it. But it doesn't. It's what's traumatic to you. And people have to understand that something that may affect you one way may not affect someone else another way. So qualifying how you feel in that moment of your experience, don't let anyone negate that, And it's not for me to say you didn't go through trauma, you didn't go through this, or this isn't as bad as you think. No, it's for me to acknowledge how you feel and to be considerate and to help you gather tools to work through those feelings so that you can be productive in the ways that you want to be, so you can lead a great quality of life and heal on your journey. But it's one of the things that I struggled with. I lost my husband probably 8 years ago, and it was my first time being diagnosed with PTSD. And then through this COVID experience, I didn't get a chance to sit still. I was in the emergency room 24/7. So we were so grateful for so many people reaching out and supporting us during that time as frontline physicians and caretakers. But mentally, yeah, it was a huge toll trying to care for people, not knowing if you were endangering yourself, if you were bringing this disease home to your family. So that time frame was extra stressful for me personally. And using cannabis during that time to help me manage my emotions, to help me be able to be present and continue the work that I do. Physically, it helped to decrease my anxiety overall and allowed me to practice at my maximum capacity. So it's something that I've always grown up with, being from the West Indian, especially from Jamaica. We've used cannabis in methods of teas, of salves, of creams. It's been a healing component in our medicine cabinet for generations. So I'm grateful for the chance to be able to talk about it openly, and to also be able to recommend it for patients and show them different ways to medicate. So it's been one of those life-saving journeys, and I hope that people don't ignore the importance of mental health, because stress magnifies inflammation, which physically manifests in all these disease processes. And that's why CBD has been useful, because it can affect so many different systems in your body. And especially through the endocannabinoid system, it can tap in and help to minimize your inflammatory levels, which can maximize your ability to fight all these engagements that you're seeing in life, you know? So it just makes you overall more homeostasis in your journey for wellness and doing better. So yeah, stress is the number one thing. I'd say the killer before heart disease, before lung disease, before anything else. Stress is right up there with it.
I find that if we don't take time in the morning to, that's like the most important meditation for me, is my first one in the morning, because that's when I don't open my eyes until I feel like who I want to feel that day. Because if I just get out of bed and go, I'm dealing with life stress already. I'm dealing with yesterday, I'm dealing with emails, phone calls for later, any of these stresses. And that's why it's super important for me in the morning, take that time to get myself calm, to get myself, who do I want to be today? Who do I want to show up as? And yeah, I find that it's super important, because like you're saying, that stress is a killer. Stress is the killer.
Yeah, your intention, you're setting your intention for the day, which will help you execute more efficiently. So that's all you can try to do in the society and world, you know? Be intentional, be positive, and move in that light and manner and with that goal, you'll be amazing, however it plays out, you know? So your intention and positivity for how you want to start your day and how you want to contribute to the world, I think those are beautiful blessings.
Thank you, Doctor. And Ricky, can you share with us any past experiences?
Well, yeah, I mean, but being a football player, there's tons of stress, physical, mental, emotional. You know, I don't know. Hearing this conversation, it makes me think. I don't think stress is the killer, because if we look at our lives and the things that are most meaningful to us and that we've accomplished, that we're most proud of, 100% have required stress to be able to accomplish those things. I think the distinction is meaningless stress. Meaningless stress. You know, like winning the Heisman Trophy, right? A lot of stress went into that, okay? But it led to a meaningful accomplishment, okay? And so it's like all the stress I put in, I actually got something in return that helped alleviate stress, okay? So you know, the term they use is eustress, you know, positive stress. But if we start to take on stressors that are none of our business, that are not ours to take on, that we've been trained to take on, that overloads the system, right? And the result of that overload is anxiety and depression. So for me, when I think of anxiety and depression, not something to run away from or to be afraid of, is to look at it as information. So I was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder when I was a football player. When I really think about it, social anxiety, that the people I surround myself with are creating anxiety for me, right? And for me, the simple solution was to surround myself with different people. And I found that certain people that I surrounded myself with, I didn't have anxiety. Actually, it felt better. And so I think if we look at our mental health, what's going on inside as information, okay, and this is where the spiritual side comes in. I feel like it's almost a bad word, but I like to keep it simple. The word soul, okay? Actually, the word psyche means soul. So the origin of psychology is the study of the soul. And when I mean soul, it's not a way out there term, it's just our inner self. And if we really think about it, we can realize that we live in two different worlds. We have an inner world, the feelings, the things that we sense, that only we sense. And then we have the external world, all the things that we have to do. And I think when we talk about being holistic, the simple is that we're taking care of both parts of ourselves. Is making sure the things we do out in the world feel good to us, right? And the things that feel good to us, that we can have some expression of those things out in the world. But from a very young age, we're trained, we're not supposed to do that. And so I think that kind of training builds up over time and it creates mental health issues. And the depression and the anxiety is just trying to say, like, hey, there's something in here that's important and valuable that needs to express itself. And if you don't listen to that and find expression, it's going to haunt you, you know? And so I think, at least for me, when I remember playing football and I was like, the stress was just getting overwhelming. And I had this thought, I never meditated in my life, but I had this thought of like, man, I wish things would slow down a little bit so I had more time to really check in what was going on in here with what's going on in here and attend to it. But life, it has me running, chasing all these things that I can't do it. Okay. All right. A couple of months later, I decided to walk away from football and take a year to travel and slow things down and get a greater sense of what's going on in here. And in that year, I got like very much acquainted with who I was on the inside. And so I started to be able to live my life where I was making external decisions, but checking in first with how it feels to me. You know, and the best thing I did for my mental health was I made a list of all the excuses and the reasons I have for not attending to my mental health. And I slowly started to cross those reasons and excuses off the list.
There, I just think that stress is the killer when we turn it on and we can't turn it back off. So when it's not for things that are helping us to achieve something of greatness, when it's our companion, when it's our job, when it's our bills that are draining us, that we turn on our adrenals and they don't turn off, that's the stress that's the killer's type of stress, the bad stress. When we can't turn it off because it's our environment, you know, it's just what
it might sound strange, but it's turning it off, but energy can be neither created nor destroyed. It can only be changed in form. And so if we realize, because we all need a certain level of stress in our lives, it's literally what keeps us upright, you know? Stress of gravity builds muscle so that we can keep upright and move in the world. So I think when we realize that we're focusing on the negative stress, if we can reorient ourselves to find more meaningful stressors, you know, I think because you know this, right? Meditation is stressful, right? In the sense of I have to find time, have to find the space, I have to sit and actually be aware of the thoughts that are going on in my mind. Okay, but that's a meaningful stress. Like we know every time we make the effort to sit down and meditate, right? We feel lighter, we feel better. And so I think it's about people realizing that we've been given a tons amount of energy to be able to do things in the world. And we have to ask ourselves, are the things we're doing or the way we're expending our energy, is it making us happy? You know, because I think that's a simple way to get to the core of mental health. Because when we're happy, we don't complain about the stress. When we're happy, we smile and we embrace these opportunities to be able to tackle challenges and obstacles. And you know, back to the definition of mental health, what I love in there, it's about contributing to the community. Okay. And all of us, right? All of us at least have potential, okay? And if we use the proper stress to develop that potential, we all end up with something that we act useful that we have to offer to the community, you know? Like all of us here, right? We wouldn't be sitting here on this panel if we hadn't gone through difficult things to get here and have something useful to share with people.
But all of us here are also the top 1% of people who have taken those stressors and be able to create tools to manage the stress. We have all been in positions that are luxuries to the majority of the population who don't know how to manage their stress and can't take the time or afford the time. So what I really want to emphasize is building these skills into our daily, just like you get up and brush your teeth and put on your tennis shoes and get out the house, building in that time of stillness, however that meditation looks for you, you know, however you use that, instead of it being an option, making it a mandatory part of creating your day. Just as important as you get up and turn on the lights, you take that moment for yourself, however long you can afford, but you take that moment for yourself, because we've all been in positions that allow us to create those moments. And some people feel like, I don't have those moments. I don't have time. I got to get the kids out of the house. I got to go. I got a routine. I got to be at work at 9. Like all of those things start to build and manifest. So understanding the tools to how to centralize your stress and manifest it into good stress is like, we're talking like galaxies and stars to the majority of the population, right? They don't have that capacity or understand or saw that narrative growing up. They didn't see their single mom, you know, out here taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to enjoy fresh air. They saw their mom hustling to make a way for all of us, as I did. So growing up in New York, growing up in dysfunctional environments, they don't see that mental wellness as even an option for them. They see it as a luxury. They don't see it as a necessity. So changing that narrative is really important. And I'm hoping that this is what this panel is able to do for a lot of people in their day-to-day.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. You know, and I think like for me, the reason and the value of the stillness is because there is a part inside of us that has access to these things. But if we're so busy external and we don't, and this to me is like a personal decision that people have to make and stick to, you know, is that in life to have anything worthy, you have to work for it. And this is what I was talking about, the stress. And it's about the training that we've all received is that, you know, the meaning in life is external. It's, but my experience is the meaning in life actually starts here, and it's about expressing it into the world. And like I was fortunate to grow up in a, well, I say fortunate, but it goes both ways, to grow up in a religious household. And so from the time I was born, I, you know, was told that Jesus lives in my heart. And so at the very least, it gave me an orientation to that there's something inside that's extremely important. And, you know, you referred to it as intuition, but yeah, it was that connection to trust that voice inside, whatever we call it, is to give validity and trust to that voice inside. And my meditation practice, however we do it, anything that gives us that feeling of peace and stillness inside, right, allows us to access our internal reserves. And I'm here to tell everyone, you know, we all have them and they're all there. It's just a matter of the attention we pay to them, because, you know, whatever we give our attention to gets energy and becomes stronger. And if we give our attention mainly to our stress, right, those stresses, they get more powerful. If we give our attention into the part of us that has attracted those experiences to us to help us grow and learn, then we feel empowered and we access the resources that'll help us overcome these challenges. And I think it's obvious from the way I'm speaking that I was a football player, because the training I received as a football player, you know, we talk about anxiety and depression, and I don't mean to make light of these, but this is the real experience, okay? Is when I was playing, and we're playing the Ravens, okay? Ed Reed, right? Ray Lewis, that defense, right? I promise you, every single time, anxiety, you know, and depression of, damn, what if they like stop me and I don't have a good game, right? But I had to find a way to realize that, oh, I've been training, I've been doing this for years, I have the resources, I just have to focus and work hard and practice, listen to my coaches and prepare myself. And then the challenge comes and, oh, I did better than I expected. So just, you know, 16 games a year for 10 years, okay? Like this constant, that it taught me, it gave me the skills to be able to deal with stress, you know? And I think if we look at our lives, we've all had difficult things, and there's been difficult things that we've overcome, you know? Yeah. I had a teacher, and he defined success as a human as being alive, you know? There's a lot of things that are trying to take us out, and to acknowledge that just us being here, being in the fight, you know, paying attention, doing these things, it's success. It's success that we can all build on.
It's so critical too, because oftentimes you're praised for your accolades of what you've accomplished. He was this amazing speaker. He developed this technology. He did this grant. He gave to people. And you're not praised for how sound you are as a person and how much you have done to work on yourself. That's never acknowledged as a good thing. It's always been viewed as being weak. You had to take time off. You had to step away. You had to do this. And even when I took my time off from work, from you know, being able to be present with myself and spend more time with my family and change that narrative in my career, it was like, oh, she can't handle it. No, I can handle it. You know, I was built to do this. I can definitely handle it. But it's how I want to manage it and what quality of life do I want to proceed. and what's important to me in this stage when my daughter has, a few more years left before going to college, like changing my career choices and my decision to be able to help people in a different manner was not always respected. I received so much pushback from my community because there wasn't the belief in cannabis because you didn't learn about cannabis as a healing option in medical school. You learned about it as a part of the pharmacology, you know, part of the semester that said, don't do drugs. Cannabis is going to make you high and unproductive and cause you to have slow lag time and have red bloodshot eyes and not be able to be a contributor to the world. So it never discussed the potential of its healing. And unless you actively seek and find out that information, many physicians can't even conceptualize how it's been helpful. And they don't understand the testimonies because they have not tapped into plant-based medicine or they haven't tapped into organic concepts of healing. They're so drilled to think that it has to be a pill or it has to be a topical or it has to be an injection and not understand that there's so many different ways for your journey to be authentic, and each individual is going to have their own customized journey. It's not universal for everyone. So helping other doctors to understand that perception and that concept of healing has been part of my greatest work, because if you don't have a relationship with a physician you can trust and discuss these choices, then you're immediately going to be more secretive and coveted with your use and not be forthright and not talk about what's actually been helping you, you know?
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lynn. Well, we're talking stress. Let's talk about what we can do. A powerful tool against stress is building resilience, building resilience to stress. And, for myself, I know I spoke on it before, but a big piece for me is being mindfulness, doing the meditations, going for walks. These are different things that have helped me with building resilience to the stress that I deal with, the day-to-day stress, the good stress, but how am I dealing with it? So I want to see if you'd share with us some of the tools you use to build resilience.
Yeah,
Well,
something that, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Please.
Ricky.
No.
Oh,
Please
no,
go
so
ahead.
sorry. So I was going to say, one of the things that I've done to build resilience is I started to delegate more and really lean into my tribe. So many people say, how can I help you? What can I do? And people are often feel that as if they're weak if they ask for help or lean on someone else. So I've taken more of a tribal approach to raising my girls and making sure that my community understands where I'm at emotionally and mentally, and helping to delegate different assignments and tasks. That has really helped to build a strong network and offer different perspectives to my daughters, for them to be able to see, okay, this is not one way to do the right thing. There's multiple ways to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in your goal. So delegation has been key for me to reducing stress and allowing me to be more resilient in what I'm aiming for.
And Ricky?
Yeah, you said it, mindfulness, I love the concept, but I think it's kind of vague for people. And so I think of something you mentioned earlier, all of us have mentioned intention. You mentioned consuming cannabis and not realizing, that you could set the intention for healing. Okay? And I think this is something that two things that are powerfully aligned that most people don't really talk about. And it's cannabis and intention. Because one of the things, at least for me, when I consume cannabis, I become more aware of what's going on inside. And if I have an intention to have a greater sense of peace or understanding about what's going on inside, and I set that intention before I consume, very often at the end of that process, I have exactly what I asked for. And so I think being mindful of, and this is what I learned in my meditation practice. I remember when I first started meditating, the instruction was to sit and focus on my breath and then notice thoughts that come in and let the thoughts go. And so, a couple of weeks of practicing, I finally started to get it, and I started to notice the thoughts that came in, and they were kind of shocking, right? That's the way I think about that. That's my perspective, And so that tool of mindfulness, of being aware of the thoughts that are running through my mind, okay, and then setting an intention to have thoughts that feel better to me. Yeah. It sounds very, very simple, but it's made a drastic change. I think we don't realize that the way we think and the way we feel has this very powerful, attractive experience. If we think someone's going to get over on us or trying to get over on us, the tendency is we're going to attract those kinds of people so that we can be right. And so I think if we become aware of our thoughts and be more intentional with them, I think, to me, again, I think that's one of the simplest, easiest tools, because our awareness is something we always have. We always have. And our thoughts are something that we're constantly generating, constantly creating with.
I like that.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think the distinction between recreational use and medicinal use for people is intention. And when you ask them, like, why do you use, for people who've been using quote unquote recreationally, they're like, oh, it helps to relax me, it helps to calm me. I was like, yeah, that's undiagnosed, anxiety, that's undiagnosed PTSD, that's undiagnosed because you've never taken the time to tap into that feeling or that emotion with your therapist or with your physician or with the person you trust. It's gone so long as just being normal, that underlying trauma that you've been managing and dealing with. In so many communities, especially African American community, we deal with things that we saw the abuse in our household, we saw the drug use, we saw the trauma, we saw the alcoholism, and all of those things became normal, right? Your friends were dealing with it, your cousins was dealing with it. This was your environment. So it didn't seem that this was an actual medical condition. It just seemed like this is how we grew up. So when I talk to people now that they're 20, 30 years later, and I'm like, well, why do you use? And they're like, yeah, it just helps me to chill out. I'm like, if we tap in, that's really underlying issues that we haven't actually put a physical diagnosis to, but you're using with medicinal intention. And the whole goal is to use minimal amount of medicine to achieve maximum relief, right? So think about your intention and your purpose behind your use, and you'll always come back to a point in you that changed your entire life or has caused you to be in the position you're in now, and why you need to tap into what's going on mentally in order to be able to be progressive and intentional. But it's always intention behind the two.
Yeah, I love talking on intention. That's like when it comes to for whenever I am going to use cannabis, for the most part, I'll ask myself, what is my intention? What am I trying to achieve? Like this
Right.
morning, I didn't, I consume throughout the day. I wake up, I'm in my, I deal with a lot of old injuries and stuff, but I know sometimes smoking can give me more anxiety. So I'm starting my day off with an edible because it does help drop my shoulder. It does help me relax. But having that intention, that's the first thing is, what is it that I'm trying to heal? So it's really important to have to be setting intentions.
Yeah. One last thing. I did some ceremony work on some Native American tribes down here in Southern California. And as we were in ceremony, the lead person, he kept using the word work. He said, we're doing work. We're doing work. And he kept saying that over and over again. And when you expose yourself to different perspectives, different paradigms, usually there's nuggets that you can take away with you. And the way that we've been trained consuming cannabis is the opposite of work. And this comes back to the intention. And so I remember being in school, I studied herbalism for a couple of years. And I remember the first time I heard an adult that I respected say anything positive about cannabis. Here's what he said. He said, sometimes if there's a problem or an issue that I'm wrestling with and I can't seem to figure it out, he said, I'll consume a little bit of cannabis, to open my mind a little bit, and it helps me find a solution, okay? An uncommon solution. And I was like, oh, right. And like a lot of things started to click, a lot of things started to click for me. I was like, oh. And so this idea of work, right? If we think of, a tool to help us do work, because usually tools are to help us do work. And if the intention is to understand ourselves better, to get to the bottom of ourselves, to have a greater appreciation of what truly motivates us, what makes us feel good, what makes us feel bad, okay? This kind of intention, if we are consuming with that intention, it is work. One of my heroes, Carl Jung, He says, if we want to do anything for world peace, the number one thing we can do is work on ourselves, work on ourselves. And I think this positive stress that actually leads to improvement, okay, is any kind of effort we put into understanding and appreciating ourselves, okay? I think that always pays dividends, always.
Let's move on to, we'll talk about stigma surrounding mental health. Yeah, we'll go. So stigmas definitely create barriers to seeking seeking help when it comes to mental health. Ricky, based on your personal journey and advocacy, how do you believe we can combat stigma surrounding mental health?
Well, to me, okay, my personal experience is huge stigma when I walked away from the NFL. Okay. And I think what gives stigmas their power, or the power that we invest in them. Right. And so I think it's important to have these conversations, but I think the best is to empower each person to not buy into the stigmas. It's a personal choice inside of our mind that all of us on this call I've had to go through, right? Of hiding. And one moment we finally said, I'm not going to hide anymore. Okay, that's a personal choice, because even if we overcome this stigma, the way the world works, there's going to be all sorts of stigmas. And so I put the responsibility for dealing with stigmas in each individual person's, because that's what it's going to take. I remember even after I played, there's still the stigma, in the industry, and I wasn't sure, am I going to keep pretending, or am I going to take a step forward? And I had a dream, okay? And in this dream, I went to the University of Texas. So in this dream, I was an adult, and I was back watching a Texas game, right? And in the dream, I was in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, and I just smoked in the dream. So I had this smell, okay? And in the dream, the current Texas coaches walk in the bathroom, and I hear them coming, and in the dream, I run and I hide in the stall. Yeah. And I woke up thinking, that did not feel good. And I thought about it, and I was like, I'm older than those coaches, And so it shook up something in me, and to say, I'm not going to let that stigma have this much power over my life where I'm running and hiding. And I made a decision right then and there that I'm going to live my truth. Because again, what's inside of us, it desires to find an environment where it's allowed to express itself. But if we keep ourselves where we are, we're not going to find that environment. If we do something internally about the ways we allow stigmas and other people's opinions to force us to hide and not be ourselves, right? I'm more about empowering people to say, look, if you believe in yourself and you act on it, right, good things will happen. And I've lived my life to be an example of that, and everything that I went through, I think one of my greatest achievements is even after all of that, because of the way I stayed true to myself and lived my life, right? There's a statue at the University of Texas, and that statue came after all of this, okay? They just named the football field after me, and that came after all of this, right? And it's like, if we allow other people to define us, that's what will happen. But if we take the responsibility to define who we are, what's important to us, that's what will happen too. And it'll radiate outwards. At least that's my experience.
Thank you, Ricky.
Absolutely. There's nothing more freeing than being your authentic self. And that's what I empower people to understand and grasp, because you are your most confident, you are your sexiest, you are your best performer when you are being authentic to who you are, right? It's not a job for you. It comes naturally. And normalizing the conversation around cannabis so that it's an open dialogue from parent to child, from girlfriend to girlfriend, from mother to son, normalizing those discussions at an early age and exposing them to exactly what they're seeing on social media, exactly what they're seeing in commercials and videos and movies. The conversation is not taboo anymore. It's necessary. And it's necessary to understanding. Even when people will say, oh, your mom's a weed doctor, what does that mean? Da, da, da. And I had to teach her the language to be able to explain, what does that mean? What does that do? What do you think mom does, right? So helping her to see the benefits and the power of the plant. My mom is 65 years old, recovering from a shoulder surgery and using edibles as her treatment and therapy for pain control and inflammation. She does not use narcotics. She uses topicals and edibles. She's never smoked in her life. So that was a better delivery method for her and a better control for her. But she came from Jamaica, never touched cannabis, was opposed to it, didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing until she opened her mind to be thoughtful and consider the possibility of it as therapy. So changing that perspective and not giving power to those stigmas and helping people to be authentic in their conversation and normalizing the discussion amongst everyone and not making it taboo, like that's going to put you in a position that'll make you feel so grateful for the chance to share your story. People just want to share their experience. They just want to share their healing journey. And allowing them the safe space to do that, to not be judged, to not be looked down upon, to not know you're not going to get fired from your job because you use this. You know, there were so many just parameters around cannabis for so long. It's so great to be in 2023 now that we're seeing major corporations not testing for THC in drug screening anymore, with Amazon, with Apple, with other groups that are being more encompassing and allowing people to medicate how they want to medicate. We're seeing professional leagues like the NCAA, the NHL, the NBA, creating safe spaces for players to be able to use when they need to, and helping them to open up that discussion about their use and helping them find ways to use instead of, you know, having to do black market and stuff like that, but being more intentional about their use. So we're normalizing this conversation, even on this platform today. We're normalizing this discussion, which allows people to feel more free and open in their use, especially because there's still a lot of stigmas in certain areas of the country that either don't have a medical or recreational program in place, worrying about the potential of legal implications for your use. Am I going to get locked up? Am I going to get fined? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my scholarship or my housing? You know, descheduling cannabis is going to create a wealth of opportunity for not only scientists to research it, but it's going to help the discussion federally in helping to allow people to be free from generations and years of being locked up for cannabis use and stuff like that. So it's going to change the entire narrative surrounding cannabis and allow the entire world to look at it with more of a medicinal approach rather than a negative connotation. But we look forward to that chance, and the little things that we do every day to build this discussion and this conversation, we're chipping away at it each day in destigmatizing cannabis.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Let's talk about deal with life stresses. What you know, I feel like when it comes to meditation and stuff, when I first started, it's so easy that it's so easy not to do it. You know, in the morning time when I start my meditation, my body wants to go upstairs. My body's saying, go get that coffee now. Get the coffee, but I gotta quiet myself down and say, no, wait, do your meditation. And then go ahead and graduate to your coffee. I stack my, what do you call stacking? Yeah, I'll do my meditation. I say, once I do this, well, then I can do that. Do you have any tips on getting started with adding, not just meditation, but any new practice and new tool into your routine?
I think we live in a world where there's so much information available, you know, it just kind of comes back to the intention, you know, and like for me, when I really think once we make an intention, it's like the things, again, our thoughts tend to attract experiences to us. So I think the first thing is making an intention to take care of ourselves. I mentioned in my story, I had that intention of, I wish I had more time alone. And it took a couple of months, but that intention was so powerful, it started to make me become more aware of the choices I could make to start moving in that direction. And so I say, if you have the idea of meditation or going for long walks or just any kind of quiet time, you know, you can get on the internet, you can get on Google and just start to go down the rabbit hole. And with that intention in the search, you're going to attract things that speak to you, you know? And I think part of that is, I don't want to sound too woo-woo, but this is the power of intention, is when you get focused you start to notice the things that are resonant with your intention and you move in that direction. When you don't have an intention, it's all the unconscious intentions that were given to us by our parents and our community. It has the same effect. We gravitate towards those things. And the other thing is surrounding ourselves with people that resonate with our intentions. So if I have a friend who I know is more calm and peaceful, or maybe meditates or whatever, and I spend more time around them, I think about them more, right? That helps, right? And I think once we get clear on our intentions and we make another intention to support that with the choices we make, I think we gradually, compassionately gravitate towards those things that are going to make us feel better.
Thanks, Ricky.
That's so important. I tell myself and others, just start, whatever that looks like for you. So many people feel like, I don't have 20 minutes to sit and be still, or I don't have the proper setup in my house. I don't have the candles or the incense burning or the safe space. Just start. Just start with 1 minute a day. Just start. And as you grow in your process, you'll increase your time, and you'll get to the point where you realize, okay, I need X amount of time to be able to do this. Like, all you have to do is start with 1 minute. I saw this movie on one of the platforms the other day. It was the remake of White Men Can't Jump, right? And it had like Jack Harlow and a bunch of other people in it. And one thing that he did in the movie, which I thought was super powerful, is he would literally stop what he's doing, whether he was playing a game, he was getting upset, he needed to recenter himself, and just meditate right there on the court. He didn't need a certain space. He didn't need a quiet environment. He blocked out all the noise and just meditated at the very moment of wherever he was, where he needed to. And showing kids that who are watching this, I don't want them to feel like I have to go to the locker room, or I have to go to my car, or I have to be in my home, or I have to do this. You can do this anywhere you want. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's setup. You create what you want it to be in your mind and in your spirit. So I love that the direction of showing everything that we're doing personally in real time is becoming manifested in big screen and able to reach a larger audience, and oftentimes a younger audience that it might appeal more to. It's become a great practice, and that habit becomes a daily routine, right? So everything that you do and you build on, the more you do it and the more intentional you are about it, it becomes not even a thought that you have to. That's not a job, it's not a requirement. It's just how you are built, and it becomes a part of your wellness campaign and routine daily. So that way you build that into what you're supposed to do, and how you help to recenter yourself. So I'm hoping that people will, most importantly, take from the conversation is all you gotta do is start, just start 30 seconds, start with 1 minute. And like Ricky said, whatever your intention is, set it forth, release it, speak it. And that way you can be cognizant of it. And hopefully that'll help you to be able to make better decisions, to trust your process, to tap into emotions that you haven't been able to unlock. And it gets greater as you devote more to it personally. So just start.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Well, right now we're just pushing the 1 hour mark, so I don't want to keep pushing too much further, but I do want to give time for a little Q&A. If anyone has any questions, you can shoot it in the let me see here, question area, Q&A. Boom, boom, boom.
So there's your chat.
Okay, here we go. So I got the chat open. If anyone has any questions, you can put it here and we can, I'll share them. Do you see the questions as well there, Safiya? Or, okay,
I do. I see the Q&A
oh, you see
section,
it as well.
and I also see the chat section. Yep.
Awesome. Let's see if anyone has any questions.
And while we're waiting for that, if we want to just kind of summarize, how meaningful the discussion has been for me, I would say that I wanted to do something, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm happy we're able to make the time and the space. And thank you for being continuous on and relentless on making sure we got this accomplished this month. So thank you, Lucian, and the opportunity. So I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being flexible. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. Thank you, because it's unfortunate that we only have a month, but I think if we make the most out of this month, that it'll carry over to the rest of the year.
We have 2 questions. Awesome. We'll start off. Let's see, Brian here. So are man-made, in parentheses, drugs not based on creating effects that were first discovered in plants/nature? Are man-made drugs not based on creating effects that were first discovered in plants/nature? I'm a little lost on that one. Man-made drugs. I'm not too sure how to answer that one.
I think he's saying are pharmaceutical drugs like compound drugs? Is that what he means when he says man-made? Not based on creating effects that were first discovered in plants?
Yes.
We're getting into a discussion about big farm versus plant-based medicine. So 2 completely different goals and motives, right? So I would say big farm is created with the intention for a specific purpose, which eventually goes into lucrative returns and dividends, right? So big farm has a different purpose and meaning in how it's created versus plant and natural medicine are choices that people make and how to medicate, how to eat, how to live. So there's completely different different goals behind the different natures of healing. I think we're on the right path for your answering your question, Brian. If not, you could DM us, either of us, and we'll tap in a little bit more.
We have a few more questions. I know Ricky has to go this morning. Ricky, I just want to thank you for joining us this morning. And I know you have a meeting coming up, so I don't want to keep you here too much longer. We might have lost him. Okay, let's go here. We have another question. This is from the Indie Women's Club. So any advice to help postpartum clients that are seeking cannabis treatments while breastfeeding?
The discussion, I always refer back to ACOG, the Association of Gynecology and Obstetrics, for advice on breastfeeding while using cannabis, but there is transmission through breastfeeding. But I will also say, be mindful and be aware, because there aren't any long-term studies on newborns regarding the long-term effects of cannabis, whether that even has an effect on these infants and newborn babies. But we're always refer back to your OBGYN for guidance with that. I've seen and treated, many patients who stopped their cannabis use when they got pregnant, and after their time of delivery and healing, they rejoined the cannabis community because they were concerned about the potential long-term effects. And then I've also treated many women that use cannabis throughout their entire pregnancy and thereafter, and have beautiful, healthy babies. So it is just a matter of what's safest for you, and in conjunction with your particular physician, how they feel is the safest way to manage and take care of your child. So I would always refer you back to your GYN. But yeah, there are topicals that you can do to help with sore nipples and pain with breastfeeding. Absolutely. The cannabis in and of itself helps patients to decrease inflammation, which allows you to be better breastfeeders and allow more milk to be released. So those are all potential benefits to it, but you have to seek the advice of your OBGYN to determine if that's the right thing for you to use.
Thank you. Let's see, we have Crystal. Crystal, I feel like the only way I can properly focus and get things done is under pressure. Like time is expiring, and this of course gives me anxiety and stresses me out, but I can't get things done if it's not under these circumstances. I know Lucia mentioned resetting the mind, but what other approaches would you have for this? Let's see here.
I think Ricky touched on a really good point of good stress and negative stress. So if we, circle back to how he distinguished the two, stress can be a motivator, and it can also be a hindrance, right? So channeling the stress so that you're managing the stress and the stress is not managing you, so that you can be productive in that function that you're trying to achieve. There's always going to be stress in our lives. It's just how we use it and what tool does it have to help us be more efficient and effective in our use, and what it does to help motivate us to achieve the goal. So he really spent a lot of time on the topic of stress and focusing your stress to be good stressors and surrounding yourself with people that can help manifest that good stress and use it as a motivator instead of something that's going to deter you from your goal.
Let's see here. We have one more. We'll do one more question from Cassandra Howard. Thank you for doing this during May, Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm from Rhode Island, where more than 170,000 individuals have identified as having mental health struggles, and we are the top 5 OD deaths in this country. What verbiage do you recommend using for promoting the use of cannabis for healing and reducing the stigma of it in mental health field, while also combating the idea of substance abuse? Maybe that again.
Thank you, Cassandra. That's a great question. And I think what you are doing overall is changing the culture surrounding cannabis, showing a cannabis user as a productive member of society instead of a non-functional person. For so long, society, images, mainstream media projected and displayed cannabis users as non-productive, as wasting their life, as abusing cannabis. They didn't show the power of the healing of the plant. And what we're doing as a community is showing people that, hey, this woman, Dr. Lynn, she uses cannabis in different delivery methods, and it helps her to be able to focus, to be efficient, to be effective. And with opening that conversation and reducing the mask and taking off the mask and not being secretive about our discussion and our journey and our healing, every day we're making intention and steps in our ability to destigmatize cannabis and be honest about our cannabis. And in doing that, you promote cannabis for its healing, and that will, over time, reduce the stigma of cannabis. But this is, 100 plus years in the making of how people have viewed cannabis. So what we're doing is undoing what has been done to our society and culture, right? We're taking on that battle of changing the perception of what a cannabis user looks like. It looks like a functional professional person, a productive mother, a physician, a lawyer. Like, it looks like a professional person who and continues to be contributing to society. So the more people are open about it and the more people talk about it, the stigma is going to eventually become less, right? But it's just time. It's just being persistent about this conversation and making sure that you're promoting that in everything that you do, the language that you use, the education that you give, the teaching that you do to, people coming up behind you and the elders and stuff like that, so that you're changing the entire direction, purpose, and image of what a cannabis user looks like.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. I just want to add one thing to that. I see in parentheses is substance abuse, and I think one way of, if you're talking to somebody about, because cannabis isn't the same as using other drugs. We have an endocannabinoid system. Our bodies are designed to break down cannabis. So that's how I would differentiate cannabis compared to using a drug like cocaine or other harmful drugs. We don't have a cocaine system in our body.
Receptors. We don't have a way to process cocaine in our body that's going to become positive and become healing versus each and every one of us live and embody an ECS system, an endocannabinoid system. We have that innately in us, just like we have our central nervous system, we have our digestive system, we have our fertility, all of the systems that we already have within our human being. Each of us possess an endocannabinoid system. And what cannabis does is it acts on the ECS receptors to reduce inflammation and limit pain, depending on your strain, your terpenes, and all of those things that kind of go into your intention behind your use and how you choose to medicate. But it acts on a living system that's already within us. So if you speak from the science perspective too, like if you know that part, yeah, when you start talking that knowledge and kicking that game, people are going to be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And that's why descheduling cannabis will allow greater research on it, to have these, good discussions, more open discussions, because science will get behind its use, and that'll help the validity of it instead of the individual testimony. So it'll help to allow more NIH and other institutions to research it and show actual studies where it has been useful.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. Lynn, for coming on today. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone who came in and supported. And just remember that your mental health matters, and you're never alone. There's always support.
Absolutely, definitely. And community like this is what we strive for. And hopefully our platforms will be able to, broadcast a greater message of wellness and finding time for yourself. But if you need us, I can be reached at Ask Dr. Lynn, AskDoctorLyn, on all social media platforms. Feel free to email me. It's info@askdrlynn.com. Call the office, schedule an appointment. So a lot of different ways to reach out. I'm definitely the one that responds to all that stuff. So if you have a question, if you have a desire, tap in and let us know how we can help you.
Awesome. Thank you again, and have a great day ahead.
You too. Thank you, team.
Bye-bye.